Welcome everybody. My name is, for those who don't know me, my name is Stuart Heddich. I'm the president of the Melbourne Electronics and Radio Club, and I'm the conspirator that organised this little activity here tonight. This is one of our Melbourne Electronics and Radio Club irregular guest speakers that we have when we have the opportunity to arrange such, and thanks to the facilities provided by Zoom, we're able to go a little bit further afield than what we have in the past. And one of our guys in this group, I won't mention his name, challenged me to see if I could get DX Commander as a guest speaker. And I thought there's nothing like a challenge, so always ask the question. So that's what I did, racked up an email, shot it out, and got a very, very polite reply and said, indeed. And I thought, that's a good reaction. So with no more carry on than that, Callum, I would like to introduce you to the Melbourne Electronics and Radio Club members and guests. And I'm going to hand you the floor. What we're going to do is we'll basically have a bit of a, let you have the floor and tell us what's happening, and then we'll break out into a question and answer session at your call. So it's yours, my friend.
Well, a very good evening, Australia. It's about a 1 hour to noon here in the UK, and before this presentation started, we were just saying that I've never had such a pile up from VK in my life. So yeah, I don't actually like preparing that much for a presentation, because I like the dynamic, the way it's going to go. But in this case, I have brought some props with me just to generate a debate. So let me tell you who I am, what I am, and about it. So I live in a place called Solihull. I've got Wendy, I'm married to. My son Lockie, he works for DX Commander, who said he's going to get a foundation license. So we're going to buy the book for him. My daughter, the age of 12, she's probably expired now thinking about it. We better check that. She's M6ELM. And last September, we put on the air and she ran a pilot for about 2 hours. First time on the radio. She did really well. What nobody knows is that we were both wearing headphones and she was forgetting to say things and she couldn't hear me very well. So I had to shout things like, thank you, Andre from Belgium, you know. But there we are. So that's the family. Couple of dogs, 3 chickens, a cat, that sort of thing. Now, 2013, we went on a holiday and I'd been working very hard. I used to have this business and wore a suit and tie and all that sort of stuff. Went on a holiday right by a beach. And I remember taking the amplifier with me and actually filled the car up with soldering irons, wire, poles, roof rack full of stuff. Wendy wanted to know why I needed the amplifier. And I told her that because we were by the sea, it would attenuate the signal. Of course, that's not the truth. The truth was I was getting an extra 10 dB a kick anyway. But I'd never really had much experience of a vertical. Now, I had a few DX Commander poles with me. In those days, DX Commander didn't exist. So it didn't say DX Commander down the side. But I had a couple of these 10 meter, you guys call them squid poles. I like to call them DX Commanders. Because I had taken enough stuff to put up a 40-foot scaffold tower with a Yagi and stuff on the top. But I realized that the wind directly on the beach, because literally there was a wall, pebbles, sea, would have probably knocked it over, and I felt it a bit unsafe. So I reverted to plan B. I cut myself a 40-meter vertical. I put, I think, only 4 radials down, and I was very naive. I didn't know what I was doing in those days when it came to verticals, but I connected it all up and I had a ball on 40 meters. By accident, I happened to find out that, well, it wasn't an accident. It was just, I was thinking about fan dipoles and how I could multi-band this thing. And I knew I was nearly getting a tune on 15. And in fact, my website, there's a QSO of me on 15 with this thing, talking to a guy in VK and ZL on 15 and the USA. So 15 was doing really well, but I couldn't get on 20. So what I thought I'd do is just run another wire up the side of the pole. So we had 40 going up here. I mean, I kind of wound it around, not for it to be helically wound, just to stop the wire flopping about, you know. Got an itchy eye. And then I put this 20 very near it, but I couldn't get a very good match. I was getting like a 3-to-1 SWR. And I think looking back, it's because they were just too close together. You need a little bit of separation, don't you? So I had another pole with me and I built 20 on that, and more coax. I had a coax switch. I mean, I literally took the whole shack down. But I tried 10 meters up the side and 6 meters up the side. And I was getting a perfect tune, but looking back, I had some reasonable separation on these wires, you see. Fun fact for you, 6 meters was too short, and I added a little bit of wire to the side of the element, just to the side of the element, and that brought it down a couple of 100 kilohertz. Bit of loading there, look. Anyway, to cut long story short, I said to Wendy halfway through that holiday, because I was having such a good time. She wasn't, but I was. I mean, I would run it, like, we'd go out to a restaurant, come back home, I'd get on the radio by 11 at night, and I was running through to 5, 6 in the morning. Some nights making up to 500 DX contacts. I had a ball. So halfway through the holiday, I said to Wendy, let's just book this next year, because this is amazing. I'm having the best holiday of my life. So she agreed, and we booked it again next year. But I was a bit more prepared at this time. And actually, it was just a random plastic plate, which I put some bolts in, and then I put some copper wire around the back to turn it into a ground plate. And then I connected some radials. I think I went up to 8 that year. I just had a little bit of coax with the center of the coax on a little jumper going up, and another on the braid of the coax, a bit of a jumper going to this little ground plate thing. And that worked fine. But I had made this so I could add some elements with a bit of spacing. And sure enough, the blooming thing worked. So that was 2014, which is the first time I truly multi-banded this vertical system. And again, had another fantastic 2 weeks. These are the best fortnights I've ever had, to be honest, on the radio. So when I came back, I thought I'll make 20. So I bought big 1/4 inch thick, 6 millimeters in VK land, aluminium angle iron, or angle as you call it, right? I had to get a pillar drill so I could carve these holes out, because that slid over the pole. It is enormous, right? But as a prototype, it kind of worked. And I made a couple of these, and also die points. I couldn't get circles of, I think it's a nylon 66, but I could get squares. So I was buying squares and then drilling holes. And drilling holes in nylon 66, I can feel it now, that you've got to go really slowly because the drill bit clogs up where it was a hole cutter. And it also melts if you go a bit too quick. So it took forever to do these. Guide points, driven plates, and all sorts. And I went to the Withell Rally, which was my club, and I sold a pole and a couple of plates. Yeah, just simple. And some pictures of what it looked like. I mean, it was really Heath Robinson stuff, but I actually sold out. I think I made 10 kits. I sold them for like $80, $100, you know. So I soon realized that wasn't, because if you're new around here and you've been living under a rock and you don't know what a DXMR is, it's effectively a pole. I have one here. So this is, I do a number of poles, but it doesn't, I'm not going to go into all the variants. Get the logo the right way around. So this is called an expedition pole. So it's the full, in fact, it's a really long pole. It's 10 meters high. And to take the base off, I'll just show you how this kind of works together. It comes with a little bit of a foam block there, which I asked the factory to do for me. it just stops it all rattling around. You'll see how many, there's a lot of sections, but this is for a traveling, you know, SOTA type, or as Americans do, you know, they do parks on the air and that sort of thing. But the idea was, if I could get some 3mm, 1/8 of an inch, laser cut ground plates, which would screw on the bottom of this, you see. And then we'd have what I call a driven plate, which would go over the top. And they'd be quite close to each other. So you've got the ground radials that come off here, and then you've got your various elements that will come off. Yeah, and a little SO23. This is an old one, you see. In fact, this one looks like a Bude one. A lot of people initially said, how the hell, you only get 6 radials or whatever on these? Of course, they're just not thinking outside the box. You could put any number of fork connectors you want on one of these. 60 radials are not a problem. You know, some companies make huge, great ground plates for a fortune. No, I just don't get it. You only need a few holes. Put them on ring connectors or something. And then I started with, the only reason I got on YouTube is that the complexity and the new thinking behind this DX Commander all-band vertical meant that I had to make a video, because just to show people what it was like. I didn't have a marketing budget or anything. And I'd put an eBay advert on and follow this link and watch the video, you know, that sort of thing. And that's had like 30,000 views or something. It's a really old video, and I don't quite know what I'm doing putting the camera, you know, it's difficult. But I mean, it went from a trickle turn into a monster, to the point where, you know, Wendy, sometimes she's down, I call it the workshop still, but it's a little the factory, and she makes all the bags up, because what we supply these days in the box, she makes all these bags, and there's all the fork connectors, nuts, bolts, washers, paracord, hose clamp connectors, tubing, heat shrink, everything. She makes these up. She's even got a checklist, because sometimes she made a mistake. Somebody would say, I haven't got any fork connectors or whatever. So I used to have a go. So that's cost us margin fixing this problem. And so Wendy makes that up. Lockie, my son, packs everything. And he also makes something now. It's a classic box. So Lockie makes up the SO239, which goes in a little bag with a QSL card and some stickers, and he supplies some self-amalgamating tape. And then he drills out these. Well, he doesn't drill them out, he just taps them now. And then the customer gets 3 quite big plates, because they go at different places. We've got different inside diameters. Then this little thing at the top. So 40 meters goes straight up, and 80 meters or 30 meters. 80 meters comes off one side, and about 7 meters high to get an inverted L. Inverted L. I said that twice because I went quiet in my headphones. And on the modeling, inverted L's didn't ever look very good to me, but in real life, absolutely worked great. I'm absolutely delighted with the inverted L. So the total DX Commander kit these days is that the box of tricks is a bag of nuts, bolts, washers. Then I got a story about the wire. Made in England for DX Commander. So this wire, I used to supply. Well, initially I never supplied any wire. I just said we just use any wire, but it just felt wrong. It'd be nice to give them something, you know. So I buy from the used marketplace some ex-military comms wire called D10, which is a really horrible wire, but it's actually quite interesting. It's double sheathed, so there's a PVC and a different plastic, which eventually breaks down, it's how it happens. Then there's 4 copper and 3 steel, very thin connectors, so it's actually quite strong. there used to be loads of it on the second-hand market, and I bought for a couple of years 60 to 100 miles of this stuff. For you guys, that's just over 150 kilometers. Are my other eyes going now? And then eventually, I obviously used up the whole of the second-hand market. So I had to find, I used to say to Wendy, I'm really worried. So I contacted all the wire manufacturers. I was going to go to the Far East, and a couple of people on my channel privately said, just be careful you go Far East, because the quality is going to vary. You think you're getting one thing and they'll send you something else. And I actually thought, yeah, I'm in the quality market. I'll see if I can find something, at least Europe, but this is made in Manchester. And it is originally a military spec, and you can still buy this in a twisted pair, actually. And apparently it's good for minus 40 degrees centigrade, because the military use it for demolition. Twisted together, demolition wire. It's quite expensive because, typically, like the military's like, the spec's very high. So it's low resistance, lower than the telephone wire I used to use, D10. And so anyway, they sent me a sample. They sent me loads of samples. But this stuff I really liked because it's had a really nice feel to it. And I did a video where I stuck, this is the most frightening thing I think I've ever done. I keyed down, went to a minute where I thought I'll do another 5 seconds, but nothing blew up. And it was 1,600 watts, key down on 20 meters. And it didn't burst into flames. So I was really pleased. I think near the top got a little bit hot, only because there was a little dent in the PVC where it touched the branch. And I'm saying some things get hot because wouldn't it be really cool to have black plastic plates for the DX Commander, because it's all black. So we specified these, and I had about 100 of these, sent them all out, and within 2 weeks I was getting notified of fires. Right, we couldn't work out what was going on fire until a guy, I think in Scandinavia, actually saw it was this plate that caught on fire. A lot of people say, by the way, oh, you can test this out by putting it in a microwave. So I got a piece of this, put it in the microwave, and it didn't catch fire. It got a bit soft, but it didn't catch fire. Not even much smoke. So weirdly enough, just because it's melting on the 30 meter or 40 meter band very easily, like at 100 watts key down, microwave wasn't having much effect on it. So I'm not a materials chemist or physicist. I've had to live and learn. So now we use this is UHMWPE as well, but it's got a very high carbon content. UHMWPE is ultra high molecular weight polyethylene. It's a little bit not like nylon 6. It cuts really nicely and it water jets really nicely, because that's how you get the plates. And there's a chap called Tyler in California. He does all my 2D drawings for me. Well, they're 3D actually. And I can just send them straight to the factory and they cut it. So there we are. More stuff I used to do. I found this in my museum box. I cut these for directors and reflectors. So I've sold quite a lot of 3-element verticals, effectively. So you got your vertical. And then years ago, James and I tried putting a reflector behind it and a director in front of it. And I did all the modeling. And for some reason, I was fixated on quarter of wavelength spacing. I think that should be shorter now, somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4. Yeah. And that gives great gain in the direction. So you get about 6 dB, which is better than a 2-element phase array, but of course you can't switch it. Well, you could switch it back and forth. You can go omnidirectional, but you need a bunch of relays and all sorts of stuff. Loading coils just to switch the lengths between the two, So I'm going to build another one of them, because I built one, and I'll do the numbers with you in a minute, but I built one in Bude on 2014. I did the modeling, took it down, and I reckon I was getting about 6 dB. So, but I was also at that time yeah, outside my license conditions with a linear amplifier, because I thought I wanted to make a bit of a racket and I'm on holiday and I don't want to hang around. So I went big time QRO at certainly 1,000 watts. So, but when I look at 1,000 watts and I had 6 dB gain over a straight vertical in one direction, and I had the C, that's giving me 16 dB, right? Now, if anybody can do the numbers here, but 16 dB on 1,000 watts is a hell of a lot. Like 10 dB is going to be 10,000 watts plus another 6, 10,000, 20. Is that 30 or 40,000 watts? You know, comparing to me running 1,000 watts just here in my backyard on a vertical. So there was people in America with big stations that were used to big high power stations telling me that they'd never heard ever anyone from Europe that loud. So, and it worked, but I didn't get the front to back working so well because the spacing was wrong. So it was great gain that way, but it was also quite good gain the other way as well. But it was enough. So in the morning I could get long path ZL, because in the UK, we point west, just northwest for the USA, and long path is southwest for, well, let me think about this. Some of ZL and some of VK. Depends where you guys are. Well, that's the kind of history. So we now, I mean, we've commercialized it. We came up with a name, we came up with a logo, and it's a year now I've been on my own, because I had other businesses, you see, which just used to drag the ex-commander down, because I would be drilling, tapping out plates, packing boxes. Wendy would say, get your ass down the office, shit's happening. I'll have to stop, because their primary business, you know, was a suit and tie and had all these salesmen and everything. I hated it. I just wanted to play aerials, to be honest, make these DX commanders. All I wanted to do is make enough. I was fed up with all the stress. You know, I'm saying I was 62. At that time I was 60. And I remember having the accountant round, and he went through all the numbers again. He said, how much have you done on all this? He said, well, you only did a little bit more, and you've done it, you know. And I said, well, I'm convinced I could do it a little bit more. So we dumped the old company in December, closed it down, paid, you know, someone to do it all. It's a lot easier legally to just pay someone to say close the company than try and do it yourself. You'd be there for months. And we did that, and so January and a bit, so yeah, 15, 30, 40, about 16 months ago, I went full time on DX Commander. And yeah, we did. We made enough. Well, on paper, we made enough to make a living out of it. The trouble is, I had a bit of a cash flow issue, because very often, as a company's growing, it's got to buy more stock. So I've got all my money in cardboard boxes and poles and bits of aluminium and everything. Interestingly, that the price, I've just been told last night, price of aluminium's gone up. Aluminium has gone up by 30% overnight. The plastic, the UHMWP, has gone up. The poles themselves haven't gone up yet, but the shipping went up to me, you know, being containers and everything, 400%. Cardboard boxes I couldn't even get hold of, and they've gone up in price, and I've got a deal now, hopefully, to get 100 a month for a while. Everything's gone up. So we're going to be hitting inflation soon, I think, you know, worldwide, because there's been all sorts of shortages, you know, as this COVID thing has hit weird things, impacted supply chains and that sort of thing. So where are we? Sometime in April at the moment. This weekend, I've got to relook at my numbers again and come up with a price increase that will fit for a couple of years, if you know what I mean. Right, how have I been doing?
Oh, pretty good.
25.
Pretty good. Hey, Callum, just one quick question. May I mention the antenna modeling software you use? Do you want to talk about that?
No.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. So antenna modeling software. I mean, I'll give you my take on antenna modeling software. Unless you're paying super big money to a professional package, and I think there's some modeling packages, very, very intricate. It's quite difficult to create the antenna because you've got to put dimension. You've got to put like a spreadsheet. You've got to go, oh, it goes from here to there, then from there to there, you know. Whereas with MERC-GAL, which is all part of the creators, I don't know where they came up with the name. Yeah, I'll be guessing. I thought I knew, but then I won't say. You can literally, it's like, it's almost like using paint, if you know what I mean. You go, oh, I want to go from there to there, you know, with your mouse clicks. You can edit that once it's drawn, but there's a little front end that I just really like, and it's free, you see. Now, there's some known faults, because it does use one of the basic engines, but there is some known faults with anything below, like a dipole, under a quarter of a wavelength. You get the wrong impedance. But I'm very often not interested really what in the impedance is and all that sort of stuff, because, you know, I'm only interested in building fairly simple stuff that anybody can build. So that's a dipole, a loop, a vertical, you know, things like that. And we know that a loop, for instance, will give us an impedance of around and about somewhere between 150 and 250 ohms, depending if it's a multiple of the frequency and how high it's above the ground. And there's choices to be made regarding a loop. You can either have a 4-to-1 balun, or you could use a coax stub. I can hear somebody chatting or noises. And same with a vertical. We know it's anywhere between 35 and 45 ohms. And in the main, by the time you got your coax out connected to your radio, you'd never blooming know anyway. You'll get a match. Same with a dipole. But what I'm interested in with computer software is I do tend to trust the far field plot. And the far field plot, you know, it tells you, you know, 5 degrees off the horizon, you know, it'll be doing, you know, -5 dB. Now, very often people don't know what -5 dB is. I mean, it's just a number, isn't it? Which is why I used to start calling them bananas, because it didn't matter what it was. It's just if I build a dipole at, say, a quarter of a wavelength above the ground and compared that to a vertical, ground mounted or elevated radials or whatever, now I can compare -5 dB to -6 dB. I just know that there's a 1 dB in it. So that's why it's bananas, because it's very difficult to visualize what -5 dB is. It's 5 dB compared to what, you know, and there we are. And the other magic trick that manufacturers, because I'm a bit of a demystifier, I like taking the crap out of stuff, is when I was newly licensed, you would look at the specs for a Diamond X510 or the 7000H, whatever, and I'd think, oh, I have that one, that's got 2 dB more than that one. Now, at VHF with very high, multiple 5/8 phase collinear type arrangement, you have got a bit of a pancake, in fairness. But on, you know, and if they say it's 13 dB or whatever, the chances are it really is. But on HF, you're not multiple ever, really. Well, maybe on 10 meters. For the average Joe, we're not multiple wavelengths off the ground. We are, if we're lucky, half a wavelength off the ground for a dipole or whatever else. I mean, for 20 meters, that's still 10 meters. We got to get it high. And is it flat topped, sloping or whatever? So achieving high gain at low angles is always very difficult. It just is. It's easy to get decent gain at 30 degrees, which is why on the 40 meter band, for instance, you can always get a contact 500 miles away. That's a walk in the park, because that's during the day is probably 45 degrees. You know, it's doink, doink. Getting the DX in the nighttime is tough. So I started measuring all antennas in software at 5 degrees off the horizon, because I knew that in the main, most DX is anywhere between, real long haul stuff, is anywhere between about 5 and, well, 3 and 8 degrees, they say, but let's say it's, you know, 2 to 15 even. But I'll measure it at the worst possible angle I can, 5 degrees, and take a measurement there. And so on. That's why I found out that in the main, doesn't matter how you build your vertical, whether it's elevated radials or not, as long as, you know, you follow some simple rules, you'll end up with this -5 point something gain at 5 degrees off the horizon. And then when I just build another antenna, I go, is that better or worse than 5 dB? -5 dB. Now, if it's -8 dB, I know that there's only 3 dB difference. So -8 dB, that means my 50 watt station, I'd have to ramp it up to 100, big deal, to compete with my other antenna. Because in the main, we'll never hear the difference of 3 dB. Marginal context, you will. You know that guy who you couldn't quite make up, you couldn't quite make him out, and he said, oh, well, I was only on 50, I'm on 100 now. Yeah, you don't see it on your signal meter, do you? But you just got a little bit more punch. Oh, it's Hotel Alpha 3, whatever. You know, now I can just hear it. It was that difference. So doubling the power, 3 dB, 6 dB, I think you can hear a difference. So one of the reasons I use software modeling is just if I've got a little idea like phased verticals or something, I just want to know, well, is it worth the trouble building this stuff for 3 dB? I don't know. Sometimes it's not the gain. Sometimes it's the front to back ratio, because I don't know about you guys, but in the UK, for instance, if I want USA, behind me, I've got Russians, Germans, Italians, all wanting USA as well. So if I could just trim them down, let's say 10 dB, 20 dB, and bring the Americans up 6 dB, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Now you're talking. Now I can hear better. So because, as Rowley said, ZL1BQD, you can always put more coal on the fire, you know. I mean, I know you can't. If you've only got a 100 watt rig, you only got a 100 watt rig, but you could technically just put more coal on the fire if you want to get out further. But then you still got the same ears as you had a minute ago. So that's why I use, that's my thoughts on MERC. It's fun to design stuff. It's fun to do like big triangles, and what happens if I could get a big 80 meter or 160 meter triangle up in the trees, you know. And I believe the far field plots, because it's worked for me. Sure enough, you know, I remember running into, I think it was the west coast of the USA, which is heavy for us, on 10 watts. Well, I started off on like 400 watts or something on this big mega loop. And I knew on 20 meters, I had like some incredible amount of gain, because this was 60, 70 feet up, a huge triangle, which was 160 meters, just under actually in circumference. Yeah, perfect tune on 20 meters. And it had this really weird gain, big lobe, like a clock face actually. There was loads all over the place, but the biggest lobe was opposite the feed point, which literally was West Coast US, you know, about 300 degrees from here. And I just kept turning the power down, because I was having a pile up to the West Coast, down to 10 watts. They were still hearing me, because I had something like 13 dB gain over a straight vertical in that configuration at 5 degrees. So I knew then that was working. So every time I've built something and it's bored out, the numbers feel right in reality. And sure enough, you know, MERC has given me a far field plot that kind of puts that into perspective. That's my thoughts on software modeling. Okay, let's fire some, any questions like, put me on the spot. I'll have a suck on my dummy.
Okay.
Oh, is Stuart gone? Oh, he's back.
I'm back. I just had to interrupt myself. Yeah, thanks, Callum. Really appreciate that. And yeah, I had a little bit of a muck around with that MERC software after you showed it on one of your YouTube videos, and it's quite fascinating. So it's it'd be quite a powerful tool. It's going to take me quite a while to learn how to use it.
I think it's nice for the far field plot, because it allows you to go, is it worth doing X or Y? I mean, it's almost as fun as actually doing it, building it in software sometimes. My only, sometimes we do have to check ourselves. If something says that's 6 dBs down on what I was expecting, you know, that's only doubling and doubling, or halving and halving. 6 dB, a terrible. So like the inverted L for 80 meters, I used to create a loop in software for 80 meters, and I get this lovely NVIS you know, 2, 3, 4, 500 mile hop stuff on 80. And then when I built an inverted L, it was my local stuff was going to be down, I don't know, 4 or 5 dB. And it really put me off ever building an inverted L until I had to once. And then I realized, well, it's fine. It hears lovely and it's transmitting. Everybody can hear me. I'm thinking, oh, what was I so worried about? You know, sometimes it's a case of just checking yourself and just go, well, other people have built it and it seems to work for them. I'll build it too. The only problem a lot of us have got, though, Stuart, of course, is this business with local noise. And I don't have a fix for that, other than the fact, buy one of these, go out in the car to a mountain.
You know, my solution is get in the car in the caravan and go up bush, get away from everything, which is great. Throw a wire up over a tree and yeah, you can play merry hell. All right, Callum, thank you very much. What I'm going to do is now throw it open to the floor for Q&A. So everybody, when you came in, you got automatically muted. So if you wish to raise a question, please do so. But remember, you need to unmute beforehand. So I'll open the floor. So here we go.
Well, I'll preempt this by saying, who has built a really cheap vertical?
Attempted, never been successful.
Never successful. Who was that, Adam?
Yeah, I have. I've actually got 2 hanging out of my tree right now, actually.
Okay.
I've got a 160 quarter wave.
Oh, yeah.
Hangs out of, which virtually hangs off the edge of a branch. And it's about 39 meters of wire plus 81 millimeters. And all the rest of and all the rest of it is actually curled on a pipe.
Okay, fine. And it's thrown over a tree. And do you have some ground radials as well, Adam?
I do. It's actually connected to the center of my garage roof.
Fine. And how well does it work on 160?
It actually receives very well, actually.
There we go. Now, isn't that what they originally called a Marconi, where you just sort of put a bit of wire out and some ground radials? I can't remember.
Not sure.
No.
Anyway, so don't be shy, guys. The floor is open. So,
Callum, it's Peters, VK6. So I had some time in VK3, and I'm still a member by remote. So, and I watched the video. So great to finally be able to talk to you. I should just show my ugly head here as well.
I can't see you.
Yeah, here we go. Here we are.
Right, I'll let Stuart drive. Why am I not seeing him, Stuart? Do you know?
it should be coming up now. It should refresh.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, yes. Hello, Mr. Peters.
How are you?
Oh, very well.
Callum, I do have a vertical at home. I've got it's a local manufacturer, a TET Entron. It's a trap vertical, and I've got a wire off the bottom for 40 and 80. And I've got a lot of radials on, and it's hanging off the chimney. So to avoid having radials out in midair, they're only in a 180 degree radius. So
yes,
that's compromising my how I'm getting out. I'm tempted to get some software and think about what it's actually doing. I've been trying to use the whisper system to work out where I'm pointing. But I'm just wondering, at what height do we need to get to in order to be able to be free of radials? Or is there another way of doing it? Because I'm just conscious that I've only got this 180 degree
right
I can get to.
I've got the answer, which is I've never known. I mean, I've got some tests I'm going to do this year actually with 90 degrees and 180 degrees, but for me it didn't feel any different. And there's a paper somewhere on the internet.
Yeah.
It was only about 3 dB difference in one direction, so you'd probably never know.
Right. Okay, that's good to know.
Never know. Now, in terms of your height, so we know that VHF works really well, multiple wavelengths up in the sky, and we get out. So you're into a height that I don't think you could ever get to if you wanted like to be totally radial free, unless it was then fed half wave, of course, with a 64 or 49 to 1 transformer. I mean, I've got 10 of those in stock, which are not in the shop yet because I was going to test one out. So I can't comment. I'll just say that some people love. Okay, so this is a good one, Brad. A lot of people buy an antenna, or they'll take a CB aerial, right? They'll take a CB aerial, they'll tune the nuts off it with an outboard tuner, and it works. Okay, so to them, it's a working antenna. They got no on 20 meters. They've got no idea really what's happening, other than the fact that they heard Giuseppe in Italy, and he got through, and he was 5 and 5. Fine. Yeah. You've got nothing to compare it to. And most of us never compare what we've got to something else. So we don't really know ever.
That's right.
And it's all circumstantial. So I took my G5 down and put up a fan dipole, and I can tell you it was much better. Well, that's what you think, right? Unless, you know, it could be conditions were better. And also, you know, you've got you didn't like your G5 RV, and by the time you put your fan dipole up, you just felt more comfortable, and you know, I don't know, whatever. But it's very often, you know, you can call CQ on one day and get nobody, and you can call CQ with the same antenna on another day and get lots of people. And that's because you're just feeling more bouncy, more chirpier yourself. There's too many variables to say, oh, I swapped my antenna from A to B and it just worked. But what I will say is that a lot of people that have gone from an end-fed half wave to even a homebrew vertical off a tree, like Adam's done, it genuinely made a difference. And I sometimes think we are that conditioned now, certainly over the last 50 years, to buy stuff, right? Yeah. You buy it and it just works. And then when people, buy DX Commander, which isn't a lot of money, or they make one or whatever. And it's like, oh my gosh, so with no traps, no coils, absolutely nothing, that's what a piece of wire does. Yes, that's right. You don't need to buy, and they want to sell you lots of nested tube of aluminium and everything. Don't they? Everybody does. It's just because it's easy to make, sling together. It looks nice and heavy, you know, big box arrive, nice writing on it and everything. And the customer feels that their $500 or whatever it is has gone somewhere. Yet, if they just put a piece of wire up the apple tree, all of a sudden they go, oh my goodness. I mean, that's
what you can achieve.
Just my thinking.
Yeah, I've just got into the SOTA thing, and so it is amazing what you can achieve on a hilltop with no QRM, QRN, or anything like that.
That's it. And you can be really inefficient. You can be really inefficient and do absolutely fine, by the way. You know, it's all just relative.
Yeah. Yeah. But I was thinking, do I take this vertical down and make it a ground mount where I can really get serious on the radials, or do I leave it elevated with a few radials that are compromised in their location? I guess that's the question I've been asking myself.
Well, Brad, and I'd suggest everybody does this, because I'm about to next week, as soon as we've got a lull in the orders, Lockie and I are going to make this little video where I'm going to get 4.9, just under 5 meters long of an element. I'm literally going to solder that to a piece of coax. I'm going to solder half a dozen radials, any just random lengths, onto the braid. I'm just going to self-amalgamating it up and throw it on a tennis ball over a tree. Pull the base down with a weight so it's sitting on the ground, and I'm just going to transmit, and I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. And that's what you could do. It costs you nothing. I'm sure you've got, you know, an old 100-meter reel of wire knocking around or something. You could make this up, and you could just test that theory out on the local tree, Brad, and just see how you got on before you took anything down. Test it out on one band. Yeah. And if the tree's tall enough, put a 40-meter over there and a 20 over there on the same feed point.
Yeah, okay, I could do that. I've got a squid pole, I could do that too. Sadly, I've got some trees that I haven't got a chance to cut down yet, but they're hanging my antennas at the moment, so they're useful, so they're alive.
Yes.
So
nice, good question.
I appreciate that, Callum. That's great. And I'll let some others jump in and give you some questions.
Lovely.
Callum, Craig here, VK3CRG. I'm very impressed with your Nebula. First of all, I love where it got the name from. And second of all, very impressed with that antenna. I've actually been looking, I live in a semi-rural area, and I've been looking at just the classic antenna from yourself. How many radials would I need and what sort of length? I know that a lot of questions about radials, but you must get that all the time. I've been watching your videos and learning a lot and really appreciate your content. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Okay, great audio, Craig, by the way. You are 5'9"
microphone here in front of me.
Ah, lovely. Okay, so I spent years, like we all did, reading articles in, you know, all sorts of magazines and on the internet about numbers and everything else. But it has, to me, boiled down to the ideal number of radials is actually, I just put it into wavelengths now. So the minimum is probably 2 wavelengths. So if I'm on 40 meters and I've got 80 meters of wire, I'll cut however many I need. It doesn't really matter. It could be 20, you know, I just cut them up and put them down. If 2 wavelengths of wire will get me out. Now, when I went to Cornwall, I had 36 3.5 meters. So what's 35 times 35? 3 3s are 9. So it's about 120 meters, which is not even 2 wavelengths, actually. And I was crossing the Atlantic from UK on 80. But I think, you know, 2 wavelengths or more is you're probably into the beginning of that curve, which is how much money you would want to put in the ground. 4 wavelengths is great. 8 wavelengths, you are now, certainly 4 wavelengths, the difference between 4 wavelengths and 8 wavelengths is 1.2 dBs. And then it becomes 1/4 of a dB and then 1/8 of a dB. And then how much money do you want to put in the ground? Because it's not, now it becomes nothing to do with what you've done on your radial field, but what's happening multiple wavelengths away. Because, you know, you're in a desert or you're in a nice, wet, marshy land and all that sort of stuff. So it's not the near field anymore. It's where the attenuation is happening a long way away.
Yep, no worries. Thank you. So it's more about the actual overall length of the radials as opposed to how long each radial is. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because Rudy Sevens, and I'm going to do this test as well because I've only read this, but Rudy Sevens is a very, very good writer and he's a good scientist. I can't remember his November or something. I can't remember his call sign. So, but he did a test. He got 16 quarter wave radials. And he measured very, very carefully, did the measurements. Then he cut them all in half and added them back in. So they now became 1/8 of a wavelength. And there was no difference. Now, at what point does that 1/8 become a 16th? You know, because you could have an infinite number of radials using up the size of an old penny, right? Clearly, you know, it's not going to work. There's going to be a minimum somewhere. Now, is it an 1/8? Is it a 16th? I reckon it's probably 16th. It's probably not actually that huge because now you're out of the control of, you're in control of all of the land, you know, within a mile of you. You know, how good is your land itself that will now make any difference to you.
Great. Thanks so much.
That's what I think.
Yeah, really appreciate your videos.
Thank you. Good question.
Next person. Somebody else. We must have some questions there. Come on, guys.
What headphones are you using? Bruce has unmuted himself.
Evening, Callum. Andre, VK3MAW. I think the thing that's putting me off using verticals, everyone says they're significantly noisier than dipoles. What would you say about that?
Well, I think this. I think that conventional wisdom, when the Yagi was invented, we discovered that you could use the same transmit antenna as the receive antenna. Before that, when amateur radio operators would have a transmitter and a receiver, they would often put their receiver on a different antenna because it wasn't as critical. Now, most rigs have got either a receive jack or a second VFO or whatever else. Then my personal opinion is, with the noise levels and everything else, I'll come back to verticals in a minute, is that you ought to consider anyway having a nice receive antenna that is low in noise, so your signal to noise ratio is really nice. So this, for instance, loop on the ground, which is 15 feet, I don't know, 3 or 4 meters square, with a nice choke, so the coax isn't picking up anything. Back to your rig. And Ian, he's one of the creators in the UK, he's got that. He plays his loop on the ground in one ear, and he has his transmit antenna on the other ear, actually, so he can hear polarization changes between vertical. It's quite fascinating. He gets a lovely experience doing that. But I would strongly suggest anyway, I mean, I'm going to put a receive antenna in, because I just think it's the way, you know, we all forgot to do that years ago. And we should, and for a very small layout, I mean, I know it's another reel of coax. Back to the question though. So, and one of the reasons why I think a low to the ground horizontal antenna is critical. If you've got high noise levels, because a vertical out in the middle of nowhere doesn't pick up any more noise than anyone else. But what it's proving is that its low angle receive capabilities is very good. It's not so much that your next door neighbor, all their noise that they're transmitting is vertically polarized. It's just, it's coming, you know, at you, and your antenna is picking up low to the ground. Whereas the signals we're actually trying to receive are arriving between, well, from 3 degrees upwards. So your neighbor next door, you don't want to hear his stuff. What you want to hear is stuff coming at an angle. So a low to the ground loop on the ground will actually hear the guy coming in, whereas your transmit antenna, which is trying to go as low to the ground as possible, will pick up all sorts of stuff. So it's actually a function of its efficiency more than verticals are noisy. Yeah, I mean, because if you turned a horizontal, if you put your horizontal dipole up high enough, it would hear that as well. That's what I think.
Okay.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, it's worth. I like the idea of a receive antenna. That could solve some of my issues here. So I'll investigate that.
Loop on the ground. There's forums, and you can even buy the little ferrites that, you know, because somebody recommended it. But you've got drawers full of this shit.
Bucket loads of stuff. Yeah.
But give it a go.
Yeah. No, I think that's another project. Fantastic.
Indeed.
And
brilliant question.
As others have said, thanks for the YouTube channel too. It's been very, very entertaining.
Entertaining, I think, is what we all need sometimes, isn't it?
Thank you.
Yeah, talking about loops, Callum, I run a 80-meter horizontal loop, which is up about 6 meters in the air. And even in suburbia here, which is very noisy, I tend to get lower noise reports, and quite a few other amateurs working in similar situations who are not very far away from me. So yeah. The loop seems to be less prone to noise, as you're saying. Okay,
I've got 5 more minutes, and then I need to get off.
Well, guys, let's make the most of it, please.
All right, yeah, question. Oh, sorry, yeah, Bryce, you take it. Callum, do you find any challenges working vertically polarized to horizontally polarized stations?
No. What do you think you're getting at, Bryce?
Oh, well, you know, our friends in the United States all have those mega antenna stations full of Yagis, and they're all horizontally polarized.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just Yagi technology. I mean, don't get me wrong. Well, it's more for VHF. But I mean, if you want a super high gain signal going that way, you really only got either a bunch of phased verticals on a massive ground, and some of these broadcast steerable stations have. But for radio amateurs, probably out of the question. So yeah, you know, it's actually, although it's expensive for us, it's a fairly cheap solution to put a 100-foot tower on and a big, you know, opti-beam thing at the top, because you literally you've got amazing front to back, and you've got this great gain. Of course, by the time I've got the signal, the polarization is all over the place. So on my receiver, I don't really care. Yeah. But I tell you, a fantastic experiment, if you ever get the opportunity to have a 2 VFO radio, genuine 2 VFOs, and you put a vertical antenna, just a simple vertical antenna on one VFO, and put a dipole on the other VFO, and you can split the audio, so it's literally probably 80% there and 80% there, you know, 80-20 split, even 100-100, and then you have a conversation, you know, with somebody, you will hear your signal going backward, sometimes quite quickly, and sometimes it will slow down.
Yeah.
But it's actually a rather pleasant experience, and you can hear the polarization actually happening. It's wonderful. Which is one of the reasons I absolutely love a 2 VFO radio, because I can hit that track button and I can hear it. Yeah, lovely. Expensive, but lovely to do.
Just one
Thanks, Bryce. Nice one.
more question before I go, because I'm gonna hit the hay. How's the move going, Callum? And
The move. Well, yeah, we're nearly there. I've just got some acoustic treatment to put up in the where we'll do the live streams from, and a little bit of painting, touching up and odds and ends, and that's almost the kind of factory done. I've just started on the antenna field now, and in fact we cut the grass yesterday with the domestic lawnmower. It's a bloody forever. Need something a little bit heavier, I think. I think next week we'll start cutting. We'll just get a radial field down, and I've got to drill some holes in the wall. The landlord's he's going to put the 4-inch pipe in for us, or should that be 100 mil? And drill through. I bought a metal cabinet for the outside of the wall, which I'm going to ground on a ground stake. I've never done all this proper grounding before. I thought now I've got the opportunity at Holly Farm, because we're not on this bonded neutral thing. We've actually got a ground at the farm. I'll bond my unit as well. It should be fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Say the owner, I'm actually quite surprised that the owner's actually getting involved with helping you do all. Like, I take my hat off to that he's letting you do.
Well, I pay for it. You know, money buys anything, Adam. And I had a little bit of a fundraiser last year, and a lot of people contributed some good money, and that's where this is going, really. Yeah.
You've already got one post there for your gate. You've already got one post there. All you have to do is just add another post so you can close it.
Yeah, we need much heavier posts though, because that gate's pretty heavy. So we've got the 2 posts. I've just got to get Big Steve to thump them in with his head.
Callum, quick question in regard to your antenna field that you're building. It's quite some distance away from your property, I believe. Is that by intention for noise, or is it just by out of circumstance?
It's circumstance. It's 50 meters, which actually isn't out of the question, because you can buy, you know, some really heavy coax if you wanted to go down that route. But 50 meters is, to me, acceptable, because my old field was a 70-meter run. So I'm actually happy with 50, you know. And for VHF, well, I'll either go down some ridiculous coax, or I'll put some little bracket at the side and get the landlord to approve and get some vertical, maybe a small rotator and summing up. Good question. Yeah.
Fair enough.
But yeah, 50 meter was a worry, but I think I can cope with it.
So I take it you're going with coax and not balanced line or anything like that.
I might strap a pair of coaxes together and use some balance and balance them. I might, as an experiment. So I'll put a couple of coax lines spare that I might try and run a doublet off. We'll see.
All right. Okay, well, it's reached the hour, so and I know
Thank you so much, guys.
I know that your time is extremely valuable, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you with us tonight, or this morning, your time.
Yeah.
And really, very, very thankful of the fact that you responded to my email. It was sort of like that was the ultimate. The fact that when I threw it out there, and I get this quite single line came back, it said "indeed," and I thought, well, there you go. So which has been a pleasure. And on behalf of the Melbourne Electronics and Radio Club, I hope that you can get some good use out of your coffee mug. And thank you very much for your time, and very much appreciate the opportunity to have you as our guest speaker here tonight.
Oh, lovely. Thanks,
So,
well done all.
Can I ask for a round of applause, please, guys?
Thanks,
You'd have to unmute.
Thank you, Callum.
Callum, before you go, Mike Adams, VK3KMA here. Does the soil in England have a lot to do with your antenna systems? Because over here in Australia, we have so much volcanic rock in different areas, and we get a lot of different feedbacks and so forth.
To answer your question, Michael, you'd have to cruise the reviews on EHAM and look where the call signs are, because there's people all over the world that are having a ball with it, including Australia. So I don't know, Michael.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I've got an appointment. I've got to go, guys. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I will talk to any radio club. It's just sometimes a case of scheduling it in. All right.
Thank you, Callum. Very much appreciated.
Thank you,
Thanks
Callum.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.